Tonight on CI, the oil spill in the Gulf, how it affects us and why some believe we should continue to drill, baby drill.
Central Issues is made possible by contributions from viewers like you.
Welcome to Central Issues. I'm George Kilpatrick. Tonight on the program, understanding the Gulf of Mexico oil spill and what it means for future drilling. As Congress began hearings on the Gulf of Mexico oil spill today, each of the major players involved, BP, Halliburton, and Transocean, took turns blaming each other for the Deepwater Horizon spill that continues to leak oil despite a massive response and containment attempts. The impact of the spill, if not contained, could be the worst in U.S. history. Meanwhile, President Obama is proposing to split the agency that oversees offshore oil drilling, the Minerals Management Service, into two parts. One to inspect oil rigs and enforce safety, the other to oversee leases and drilling and collect royalties. This as cost continues to go up, threatening the Gulf Coast livelihood and a danger to the wildlife in the area. Here to talk about the impact on environmental policy, drilling, and who's really to blame is our go-to guy on all things environmental, Dr. Charlie Hall. He's a professor in the Department of Environmental and Forest Biology at SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. Charlie, how are you?
Hi, George. I'm fine.
Formerly Dr. Hall, but we could call you, thank you for letting us call you Charlie.
Sure.
All right, help us to understand this. A lot of us perhaps have been following this on the news, watching it on various programs to get a sense of how this could have happened. So give us a sense, what actually happened?
Well, it's a very deep and challenging place to go for oil, and we don't have a lot of experience doing that. The technology is astonishing. Mm-hmm. Probably they were using GPS units to keep the drilling ship in place instead of having a rigid platform or even anchoring a boat. They have thrusters or propellers just to keep it just so. And they're amazing. You know, they go down through, I don't remember the exact statistics, but a mile of water and several miles of rock, quite a few miles of rock, and to get to this very deep oil reservoir. And
so we don't have a lot of experience in this?
No, not that depth. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're pushing the envelope every year.
This is
deep water.
Okay.
Deep water, and we don't know a lot about it. I think one thing people have to understand is that there's something like 5,500 oil rigs of some kind or another, many very large platforms out in the Gulf of Mexico. When you're out there at night, it's like a city. Lights burning and all that stuff. And so, in a certain sense, these guys are pretty good. It's often very good, and it's almost astonishing that we haven't had such a problem before.
So, given the problem, let me just deal with a little bit of that for a minute. The questions are raised about whether or not we took this serious enough. You know, when we first heard about the explosion, you know, was the response quick enough given what's happening and the fact that it's still not contained, that it could still continue to go for far longer than many have expected. They tried to contain it. That didn't work right away. They're trying some other methods. To the response, is the response appropriate for what we thought it was, or would you criticize that? And it's easy to do if you think about it in hindsight.
Well, I think there's a number of issues that it's easy to criticize.
Such as?
Well, good Lord, why wasn't this containment device, why didn't we have any experience with it? Why didn't we try it on something? Why didn't we, in science, you know, almost everything, speaking as a scientist, almost everything we come up with that we think we have some idea how it's going to work, and we try it and it doesn't until, you know, you get experience with it and you find out. So I kind of wondering why they didn't have this, I call it an upside down funnel. Mm-hmm. Why didn't they have one
ready
tested,
to go, right.
tested, sitting out there, actually every year for the last 30 years. Why are we experimenting now when we need it and we don't know what we're doing? And we try it, and first time, of course, it didn't work for reasons that are obvious now, but weren't initially. So, yeah, I would fault them a lot for not having that experience.
You said that part of what you said to me earlier was that there was also, you believe, some shady dealings here as to why. Yeah, tell me why.
Well, I get all kinds of stuff in my email. I'm a sort of Energy Central guy.
You're the go-to guy. So what's shady?
Everybody's sending me stuff.
All right, so what's shady here?
Well, I understand that on this particular rig that some shortcuts were taken, and that even former Vice President Cheney was associated with kind of giving them a buy. Now, I am not the source guy for this, but I've got a couple of emails that pretty good, knowledgeable people say that this was going on, that they cut the regulations. I mean, it's like Wall Street. Industry doesn't like to be regulated, so they get unregulated, and then disasters happen. And so this is no different, and it's a problem with how we go about doing business in the United States. Nobody wants to be regulated, but I bet you BP right now, sure as the dickens, wishes that they had been regulated to the teeth on this thing, because it's going to cost them vastly more than, you know, they were talking about devices that $500,000 devices that weren't installed.
In fact, according to
ridiculous.
In fact, according to the Guardian in the UK, the Obama administration itself, forget about Cheney for a minute, the Obama administration itself waived environmental reviews for 26 new offshore drilling projects, even as the BP oil disaster was going on.
I hadn't heard that, but
this is according to the Guardian in the UK.
Yeah, well,
to your point.
Yeah.
The point that you said that
these guys are in cahoots.
Ecological review. So this is what you're saying.
Well, I think, what, are you telling me that you're surprised when I say that politicians and wealthy industrial corporations are in cahoots? You know.
So what you're saying then to viewers is that we shouldn't be surprised that the oversight was lax, that there perhaps were some buys given to well-connected people. You're saying to viewers that they should not be surprised by that.
It's hard for me. I'm surprised by that. I mean, of course, I'm not surprised because we find out all kinds of sleazy stuff all the time. I don't know how we can have a sleaze-free democracy. That's a very important issue. But yeah, I'm surprised and I'm offended. I'm a professional and I deal with professionals. And out on those rigs, there are thousands of professionals, from the roustabouts, the guys who do the tough jobs,
sure,
and environmental scientists and safety drills. I mean, these guys are really amazing at what they do in making that there wasn't an oil spill before. They're amazing at that. And yet somewhere along this chain of command, probably pretty near the top, apparently, some very important corners were cut.
And everybody's blaming everybody else, you know.
Sure.
Halliburton says that BP's
they're
responsible.
All to blame.
Transocean says they're responsible.
And we're to blame. We're to blame. You know, I drove a car today. Did you?
I did.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying it's our dependence on oil that is making us look for all of these ways that we have to. Our dependence on it makes us continue to look for new ways to use it, is what I hear you saying.
Well, a really important fact on this oil issue, George, is that the United States had what's called peak oil or peak production in 1970. We went up, as a guy named Hubbard said, and reached our maximum production in 1970, and it's just been going down regular as can be since that time. And in fact, the last 2 years, there was a little sign of hope that there was a kind of shoulder on the downward going data because of coming online, especially of a big oil field in the Gulf of Mexico called Thunder Horse.
So why are we, if this particular area is new for us, if it's something we haven't done that much, why are we there?
Well, it's very simple, George. And one of the most important things we can say environmentally is what I teach my freshmen, and I just gave them their test, and it's the best first principle. And you know perfectly well that you look in the refrigerator and you go for the best first. It's human nature, you know, and farmers use the most fertile soil first, and an economist named Ricardo did a lot of wonderful things with that idea. So why in the world would you go out to the deep Gulf of Mexico when you could, in 1930, get oil onshore in Louisiana or Texas? So we went there, we went for the easy stuff first, got the best oil first, and that's all gone. And in fact, except for the Gulf of Mexico, essentially we haven't found any important oil since the 1960s.
But you say even still, you suggest that we continue to drill.
Well,
you do, right?
I am on record for saying that.
All right, hold on a second, because we're going to find out why. If, in fact, you say that we've pretty much exhausted what we could get there, why you still think we should drill? We'll find out about that when we continue our discussion. Stay with us. You're watching CI.
In a time of economic hardship and mounting international tension, a small town in upstate New York bands together to host the Olympic Winter Games and unites a nation with a miracle on ice, the proudest moment in American sports. On Small Town Big Dreams, Lake Placid's Olympic story.
Coming in July on WCNY.
Frontline provides me with information that makes me think.
First I shout at the television. You gotta be kidding!
You won't see this anywhere else.
The stories hit close to home.
Truth is a very valuable commodity.
They're uncompromising.
I want to do something. I want to take action.
It changed the way I actually live my life.
It lets me make up my mind.
I trust it. When I watch Frontline,
It makes me angry and it makes me want to voice it.
I want to make a difference.
We can make a difference.
Frontline.
These guys are my heroes.
Welcome back. The oil execs were on Capitol Hill today, absolving each other and themselves from the oil spill that threatens the Gulf of Mexico and thousands of jobs. Joining us to talk about that is SUNY-ESF professor Dr. Charlie Hall. He's helping us to understand why we should care about it. And the Obama administration this year, in his, what is it, State of the Union, whatever, he said he wanted to expand offshore drilling. And then this disaster came and he said, well, let's hold up on that policy for a moment. Now, you just said that, you know, we found some oil, it was convenient, it was there, and now we're out looking for more. But you think we should continue to drill. Why?
It's a question of trade-offs, and it's a question of what are the alternatives.
But okay, so let you answer that question first.
Okay. Well, first of all, we don't live in information society. We don't live in a post-industrial age. We've heard all of these things. We live in an oil age. And 2/3 of the energy used by the United States is oil and gas. And there's a pretty close but not perfect relation between our economic activity and our consumption of energy. Just for the readers to think about it, every time you spend $1, you take about a small coffee cup, half of this one, say, of oil or equivalent energy on average, has to be taken out of the ground to give meaning to that dollar. Our economy is really about energy, and money is our way of keeping track of the energy that does the work that the economy is about. And so,
but what does drilling, if this is a problem, what does drilling, expanding our offshore drilling with the risks that this represents?
No other place to go, George.
So what you're saying is, it's the least
bad alternative left.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Because we've used all the good stuff. Now we're getting a little bit more oil.
Even if what we risk is what we have right now.
Well, yeah.
Because we don't know what the costs are. We don't know right now. I mean, I guess the good news is that the impact on wildlife and the ecological impact, if there is any good news, is that we don't know yet. But isn't it true that if what we don't know is what we don't see, and just because we don't see it doesn't mean there's not going to be an impact.
Well, it could be horrendous, George.
Right, and because from what we can see right now, but isn't it true that as this thing goes forward, there could be a longer-term impact that we can't even measure right now? And so,
yes.
Yeah,
Could be enormously worse. Could
Yeah,
be
you-
horrible. I mean, if that thing, they might not be able to stop it for months. And it might go out into the Gulf of Mexico and go and coat all the beaches through Florida and then go up. Some people have made projections all the way as far as Cape Cod. So it could be horrendous, absolutely.
So doesn't that make you want to rethink your policy, your idea that we should still look for more ways to drill, even if it's going to cost us in the long run?
Well, George, what do you mean by cost? Because we need energy to do what we do in society. And
I'm just trying to understand why you think...
And we have a big population.
Right.
We have a lot more population than we were, 6 times more people than when we were running on horses. And so, okay, I might be willing to do that. I might be willing to say, you know, I got a pretty good garden and so forth, and I could look after myself on very little oil, maybe none at all. I don't think we can run our cities. We can't. I don't think and we certainly can't run our whole economy. Are you going to say, here I am, I'm running for the President of the United States, and my platform is no more oil, and the alternatives are so tiny. All the windmills and all the solar aren't even 1% of electricity, let alone of total energy use. So the alternatives are tiny.
So what did we learn then from the Exxon Valdez, which was the worst oil spill in U.S. history? Didn't we learn anything from that?
Don't be stupid. And what did we learn from this? Don't be stupid. And it isn't. But the thing is, if you have 5,500 oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, somebody's going to be stupid. Apparently, we don't seem to have the ability to avoid the stupid factor. In Valdez, I mean, apparently...
That's what we should have learned then.
Oh, well, George, you report on the news every day. There's something stupid on the news every day, isn't there?
Well...
It's kind of it's part of humanity, being human.
I understand it, but what I'm saying is, if in fact that was the worst disaster in U.S. history, and we should have learned something from that, why didn't we get it?
Because people are always cutting corners, so we don't have an oil spill for whatever it's been, 30 years or not. I mean, we do. We have lots of oil spills.
But little ones. That we contain, they get cleaned up.
And it doesn't get in the news and so forth.
Right.
And we don't clean them up. Mostly it eventually evaporates and sinks and out of sight, out of mind. But what are we don't have a good alternative except, how's this, George? You want a good alternative?
Yes.
Coal. How's that?
Nasty. It's dirty, polluting.
It kills people, and okay. Now, or how about to New Yorkers? Okay, let's not drill for any more oil, but let's put in a natural gas horizontal well in fracking on every block, at half-mile intervals and a checkerboard all over upstate New York. The thing is, the easy energy everywhere is gone.
So what I hear you saying, Dr. Charlie Hall, is that while we look at this disaster and what it represents, we cannot be short-sighted enough to say that because we don't really have sufficient alternatives at this time, what I hear you saying is that our only alternative is to continue to drill as we look for other alternatives which aren't not.
No, I think there's a great alternative.
Well, what
George.
is that?
It's to reduce enormously our use of oil. But it's still not going to solve the problem. But let's just start there.
All right, well, let's see how that's going to happen, because we will have some final thoughts on this when we come back. You're watching CI.
This fall on PBS, director Ken Burns changes parks.
There's a drive to deep right center. This may be gone. Home run. The Red Sox win.
Don't miss the all-new 10th inning of baseball.
Coming this fall to WCNY.
Connect with WCNY on your favorite social networking sites. Visit WCNY.org to see them all.
Well, welcome back. We're talking with Dr. Charlie Hall. We're talking about the oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico and what it means, what the alternatives are, and understanding it from a scientific and ecological impact. Obviously, as this gets worse, we've got issues with the wildlife. We've got issues with the fish. We've got issues with all of environmental issues. Could this affect us here in this community?
Of course, but only indirectly. I mean, there's a truck that comes up with seafood from the coast all the time, and price of shrimp or whatever you want to have. So, of course, in some relatively small ways. Probably the largest impact is, my guess is that there will be a lot of discouragement of offshore drilling, and that's going to impact us a lot into the future because that's the only place we've been able to find oil. Now, I'm not a policy person. I'm a scientist, and I'm not here to say we should or shouldn't drill oil, but I am here to lay out as best I can that the alternatives are not easy. And certainly, I think the president is correct in saying, well, we certainly have to understand how to deal with this stuff much better than we have, and then perhaps we should go forward with further drilling program.
You suggested that. So what's next? How do we reduce our dependence?
Well, there's so many ways. I'd like to put in a plug for the Covanta plant, because the Covanta plant takes stuff we throw away, all those plastic bags. 40% of the energy that goes into our waste stream in Syracuse is made of natural gas. That's what plastic is made of. And so we can use the oil and gas that we have twice. If everybody had a car that got 35 miles per gallon, then we could perhaps get by with half as much oil, at least for automobile transportation. If people drove less, I mean, do we want to go that way? No, people don't want to go that way. It's not the American way. It's not and we've been having economists tell us there's no limits to growth, that we should grow indefinitely, it'll solve all problems. Well, I believe it's pretty clear to most people that we are reaching, in many ways, some kind of limits to growth, and we need a new kind of economics to deal with that, and we need much more public education from some very clear things I think people can see. So I think we can adjust to it in many good ways, but not by simply saying we're going to produce more of something to fill in the gap, because I don't know what it is, and I've been studying this for 45 years.
What is the role then? You suggest also that there's the poverty and relationship to poverty plays a role here. What is that?
Well, our society, our whole economy runs on energy. 41 of 50 states are broke. State of New York is broke. I work for SUNY, so I'm sensitive to these issues. And
are you going to have to take a day off, or
well, I'll keep working, but they can pay me less. I'll take a 10% or 20% cut if everybody else does. The governor already has. Got my credit to him. So the issue is, though, that if I think that all this Wall Street stuff, all the state of New York problems and so forth, ultimately comes back to the fact that we are no longer growing in our use of energy. In fact, we're shrinking somewhat for the United States as a whole. Less energy, George, less economic everything. So I think this is a good time to ask some important questions about how we take what's left and how do we distribute it. And basically, it's been a free-for-all, so the rich guys have gotten the lion's share of the pie.
You raised the issue earlier, though, that part of this is something that is hard to control, which is the political, the sleaze factor in all of this, and the oversight. I mean, the administration today says that they are going to split up the MMS agency so that there'll be tighter oversight. But still, as some would suggest, as the published reports indicated, that even as the spill was gone, there were people who were able to avoid getting reviews. So Given that we have less than a minute left, Charlie, how would you help us to understand this oil spill and what happens next here?
Well, one thing as a scientist, we have a country that is basically run by lawyers, but the issues very often are scientific. I think good scientific oversight in the earlier would have never said take off these extra controls, and they would have gotten things out there and tested. And I can't solve all the political problems that we have, but I think in China, 80%, I understand, of their legislature, national legislature, are scientists and engineers. And we have...
So we need you to run for office, is that what you're saying?
I don't think that's going to work, George.
Dr. Charlie Hall, he's from SUNY-ESF, Department of Environmental and Forest Biology. Thank you so much for helping us to understand this. And that does it for today's program. We want you to continue the conversation on our blog, centralissues.org. You can also write us at the address you see on the screen. Join us tomorrow for the Syracuse Common Council for votes. They vote to restore money to the Say Yes program. Your taxes are going up, and we'll tell you what you should do. You're watching CI. I'm George Kilpatrick.